I like to call one of the juiciest, I think, of the panels, because you really have quite a lineup here of people for you to really question and needle away at. I'm going to start the questioning, and then we'll open it up for everybody else. But I like to call this the sort of ecosystem of the fashion industry that we have with us. Because as we all know, we have representatives from creative, government, the business analysis side of things, and of course, the fashion forward end of things. So we get a little bit of everybody's opinion on what's the hot topic right now, which is how far can we go with Dubai as a design district. And last but not least, I'll start with the introductions. To my left is a man who probably doesn't need an introduction at this event. Bong Guerrero is the founder of Fashion Forward. He is a real veteran of the industry. He spent 23 years in the Middle East, and you really can't do anything that has to do with fashion without mentioning Bong's name. He used to do some of the earliest catwalk shows in the region for some of the well-established designers now. He, in 2009, founded a company called Bragg that does live marketing events, and this, of course, is his brainchild, and it's been quite successful in its second season already. And we have Lindsay Miller, who's the managing director of Dubai Design District, D3. That's the buzzword, I think, of the moment. She's responsible for developing and implementing the overall strategy for D3, which is going to be a world-class creative business hub for all things design-related in Dubai. It's a really exciting project. It's going to consist of a physical space as well as sort of think tank kind of opportunities, hopefully manufacturing and much more. So we're lucky to have Lindsay here to tell us more about that. We have Cyrille Fabre, who's a partner with Bain here in the Middle East. He oversees the consumer goods, luxury, and retail practice. He spent 10 years here, and he really understands the region and what's happening in retail, and brings a strong business and numbers perspective to our panel. And last but not least is another lady who probably doesn't need an introduction here. Zayan Ghandour is a designer, a retailer, a distributor. I don't know how else we describe you. She's pretty much done it all within the fashion realm here. And there probably isn't anyone who's fashionable in Dubai who doesn't know Sauce. Sauce was co-founded by Zayan in 2004, and is now about to open their 7th boutique here in the UAE. So, as I said before, we're kind of representative of all sides of the industry. And when I say the industry, fashion is often thought of as, social, or maybe a bit, fluffy and not necessarily serious business. Or to creatives, when you talk about business, it's considered a dirty word in fashion. And the idea here is to actually talk about the viability of fashion as a business, and a real business and a big business. Cyrille shared the number that in the Middle East, fashion as a segment is worth 5.6 billion euros. So it's a huge market potential, and the type of market potential that can develop economies. So we hope now, with everything happening and all the excitement going on right now in Dubai, that we can really become a fashion hub in so many ways very quickly. So I'm going to kind of start off talking about D3, Lindsay, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. Why now? We've had these big announcements about D3. What is it, the timing of what's happening in Dubai right now, that's led to the official development of this?
Can everyone hear me? I think that. As I mentioned yesterday, and I think a lot of people know this, TCOM is a cluster developer, and so we've been looking at this fashion industry and trying to understand when's the right time to push a full-blown cluster or a full-blown ecosystem. And as someone mentioned earlier, so rightly, it's not just about the health of the retail sector. It's about looking at where the talent is at. It's looking at where academic side is at, whether the government is ready. And as we were watching it, we really started to feel the market data started to come in very strong. It started to come in a double-digit growth across design. But also anecdotally, there were 3 proposals on the table for a fashion week. So you could start to feel it, and you could start to feel, we went and talked to some different retailers, and we heard a lot about designers, specifically Zayan in specific, and where she was at. And the elements just started to come together. And we also started to feel that there was a lot of opportunity as you develop an ecosystem. We're really interested in the cross-pollination opportunities. So across industries, whether it's interior design, fashion, et cetera, but also across cultures throughout the region, just not Dubai. So it really started to align that it's now or never. This is the time for Dubai.
And it really is now, because construction's already underway, and
Yes.
first phase is finished by when?
January 2015.
And what does that consist of, the first phase of it?
So that's 9 buildings. They will be creative offices, some retail, and traditional offices.
And you already have, you know, your renters in place. Is there like a waiting list already? What's the sort of level that you're developing at?
We've started licensing already, and people have been in touch with us. We just came out with the licensing was just announced by the authority. I think it was about a month ago. It wasn't long ago. So we're starting to ramp up now. And what's so interesting when we're talking about cross-pollination is that if we look at the licenses so far, you have major international brands licensing their headquarters. You have emerging designers. So far it seems like the ecosystem is actually coming to us in a pretty balanced way, which is very exciting. It seems to be good feedback that the market timing is right for us.
You know, the second question is, who is it, and why do they want to come to Dubai? Maybe I'll actually bounce this to Cyrille right now. You study this market very well. What makes Dubai, you know, what are the conditions here that would create a fashion hub based here?
And everyone here, yes. I think if you look at fashion capital around the world, so New York, Paris, Milan, and others, what are some of the common attributes? Certainly one is it's always a large market. And, you know, fashion market in Milan, in Paris, in London is very substantial, and certainly in the US. And that's something also in Dubai where we have, not as large as they are, but let's say coming from, you know, starting not so long ago. They started a century ago. We just started maybe 15 years ago. We have already gone a very long way, and that's a very, very strong asset. And although in making Dubai a fashion hub, there is much more than the retail, but retail is also an enabler, something that attracts others because you can sell. So that's certainly one of the big assets that we have here in Dubai, as well as a pool of talent all across the region that is very strong and on which we can build. Now, admittedly, it's a long way to become really a fashion capital, because there are other dimensions where, you know, I think Fashion Forward Season 2 is a resounding success. But, you know, in Paris you have 40 events. Probably in Dubai you have north of 10, something like that. You have 300,000 visitors 380,000 visitors in the Paris fashion shows. I think this is something where we are ramping up towards, but we are not yet achieved. And you know, and some of the dimension also we talk about. I think we will talk about education. We have a number of very good fashion schools here in Dubai, but in Paris, in the UK, you would have 20, 30 fashion schools. So it's a long way to go, but I think there's definitely, because of the importance for the consumers, because of the retail market that we have, and the designers' potential in the region, we have here two good bases on which we can build.
Yeah. Well, we are using the word fashion capital, and fashion capital could mean a lot of things. I think Dubai is already very well established as a retail capital, but retail capital isn't necessarily a fashion capital yet. And Zayan, I want to start with you on this. You have been retailing, and you've always championed local designers and smaller designers, which is not easy to go up against when you have all of the big brands in this market. What do you think it's really going to do? How do you define fashion capital, and what is it going to take to get emerging designers that you've been championing, and you yourself are a designer now, in your 5th season with your own line? Where do we need to go to really be a fashion capital?
Right. SOS turns 10 years in February, and from day one we believed, we believed because we saw that there's quite a lot of talent in the region. The first 2 designers we started with, and to date, and they're now, they're very successful designers. One jewelry designer, Belarabi Nadine Anso, and another one, Isa, who showed yesterday. And they both came with, just a couple of pieces, and at the time, it was 2004. And I'm like, this is beautiful. You definitely have to start a collection. And this is how it started, and now they have retailers, they have big collections, they have a lot of hands. So the talent is there, definitely. What it takes is, I've always said, is confidence from retailers to put it up there and put it next to designers that are showing on catwalks in New York, in Milan, and in Paris. We did that, and I think now more and more retailers in the region are doing that. this, I think, gives the designers the confidence. It gives them the financial support they need to grow. So with the, now it's 10 years, and I have seen probably more than 400 regional and young talents in Dubai, in Kuwait, in Saudi, and some of them have disappeared, some of them have grown. But really, what it takes is some sort of a council, maybe, or some sort of a board that can, where those designers can go and seek the advice they need. They need it on more than one level. They need it on a creative level sometimes, because they need to have more focus into their collection. They need it on a business level, where they need to know where to put their money, how to produce their collection, where to produce it, how often. I always say I'm a good case study for a lot of designers, because I started out in retail. I know what buyers are looking for, which I think, I'm lucky that way. But I also went down the designer's way, and I saw how difficult it is to not just launch a collection, to maintain one. Because to keep up with the schedule, and if you were to show on any international schedule, it's getting faster and faster every year. There's now 4 collections a year to show, and you cannot lose a date. Otherwise, your collection wouldn't be seen, you cannot sell, you don't have a window. So in general, I think Dubai definitely is a retail hub. I think we have a lot of committed designers, probably some more than others, but I feel if there was the support they need, both financially, creatively, and many aspects, even a platform like Fashion Forward is a form of support. Yeah. So it can easily become a fashion hub. I mean, we've seen it happen in, internet city, media city, places where things happened for the people who needed such a development. So it can happen, and it can happen quicker than what people think.
Dubai is known to do things quickly. You mentioned the education component and how important that is. I know you mentor a lot of designers who you carry in your store sort of unofficially, but there does seem to be a large gap on education. And in any industry, for the development of the industry, be it medicine or anything else, you need an academic component. And Bong, it seems like you recognize that quite early by creating the concept of these talks alongside catwalk shows. Can you tell me what the feedback has been? I know you brought the Dean of Parsons Fashion School this time around. What role is the education play right now in this?
I mean, I think a big element in the success of Fashion Forward was primarily the developmental angle that we've taken as a team. We felt that we had to have a point of differentiation, that we were not just going to present collections, which obviously is a primary objective, but we were honest to say that there's a lot of learning that needs to be done, and what better way to do it but to go to the experts. So we were quite lucky to be able to invite, and of course through the help of Dubai Design District now from season 2 and hopefully onwards, we're looking to bring in a lot of experts. And we're going to look at different topics, touching on the whole spectrum, basically.
And Lindsay, when you're in the planning and strategic planning, I know you have a Vision 2020 plan for fashion that you're working on. We'll ask you maybe a little bit more about that later. But does education figure into that plan? And infrastructurally, where will it be at play at D3?
So education is a big part of the component for developing an ecosystem, and the first step that we always need to do is actually understand what's already here, and that's something that we're very much in the phase, Fashion 2020 work has been a lot about there's actually a lot in the UAE that people aren't aware of. So we need to establish that baseline first, and then we need to understand where the gaps are. So it's great to have Parsons, it's great to have these big names here, and they're very enthusiastic about Dubai, and that's fantastic, but we need to understand, are they really going to fill the gap in the market that needs to be filled? So when Zayan's talking about there's some real practical knowledge and some real business knowledge that needs to come into play here, we need to be thinking about that. We need also to be thinking about what the internship opportunities are, what the practical kind of bridge from your 4-year degree to your own business is, and is that going to be available in Dubai? So we're looking at those gaps, and we're trying to understand, where is our effort best place to really, catalyze the industry.
Yeah. Is internship an option here, Zayan, as a designer? Do you take in young interns?
Yes.
Is that...
We actually had 2 interns come in, and then they had to fly back. One was from Pakistan, and one was actually locally based. But it's not just, internship is all good, and, they come in and they learn a couple of things, and then, they might come back, they might not come back. But it's not really just about the internship and seeing how things work. It really has to be kind of your own. You can do a great job working with someone and for somebody's collection, but when you start your own collection, it's a totally different ball game. For whatever reason it is, really, it's still a mystery to me, but there is always, and I think it's true for every designer around the world, but probably more for this part of the world, because you have more to prove. So you have to prove that you're not just creative and that you can source the best fabrics around the world, and then you can cut them in a good way, and you can have a good team to make sure your product. So there's quite a lot to happen at the same time, and you're almost always going to get it wrong somewhere. Yeah. So unless you do it yourself, you're not going to find out that.
Do you find that designers are willing to band together and work together and share knowledge and share mistakes, or is there still underlying competitiveness here? I know, Bong, you're working to change that. Do you want to speak to, or Bong, maybe I'll bounce that to you. How has it been?
My favorite word these days is the word collective. I really think, and I think it's becoming more apparent. I'm hoping Fashion Forward had something to do with that, but I keep telling a lot of my designer friends and a lot of the new designers that we're meeting, recently, is that we kind of like have to band together and present ourselves as a block. It's the only time manufacturers will actually consider them as a potential clientele. They'll be busy, they'll probably want to keep on making clothes for Gap somewhere. But if we present all these designers, these regional designers, as a block, then they'll see it as a significant, significant market. I mean, that just goes in everything, even in our in the catwalk presentations, in their design. And I think, just yesterday at the industry lunch, it was just good to see everyone talking. And I think this is happening almost really just recently. We've not had this before. And I think a lot of good will come out of it.
You talked last time during the talks in April last season about the creation of a fashion design council.
Yes.
Where are we on that? Is that initiative you'll take on? There's talk that the government may do it.
We look upon the government to initiate this, and we're here to support them however they want us, and we're ready to support them with our network and our experience, and I think everyone here is ready to support the council.
Oh, and Lindsay or Cyrille, where are we in the process of that? Are you guys championing that?
There was an announcement a couple months ago, that the Executive Council had taken the lead alongside with the Dubai Technology and Media Free Zone Authority, which is the regulator of DCOM's clusters, to join forces and to establish a Fashion 2020 strategy, out of which a council would be announced. And the decree for the council has been signed and announced, and now we're just waiting for Fashion 2020 to conclude and understand who are the right members, who are really going to be able to move the needle for this industry, and what are their priorities going to be, what are their deliverables. Because it's not enough to just name a council. They have to be accountable to actually deliver to the industry. Yeah. There's one thing I do want to mention about the designers, because I think it's very important as we're talking both about the council and the industry. I love the word collective too, but there's a kind of more corny buzzword from a few years ago, which is co-opetition. And when you're looking at developing industries, it's very important for people to come together and say, these are the things that we compete on, and these are the things that we cooperate on. True. And that's going to be very important in the next few years, that designers really have an understanding. We band together on manufacturing, we band together on lobbying for IP, we compete on retail sales. Yes. Yeah. So I would really encourage that thinking.
There's so many ways we can go with this now, but the next thing, since you last mentioned manufacturing, that is a big challenge here. And it leads to many things. We don't have a manufacturer here, probably because there's not a lot in Dubai that do this professionally. But there's issues with outsourcing, and Zayan, you can share those stories of how difficult it is to do it in China and other places. And different designers have done different things. Maybe Zayan, we'll start with your experience of what has manufacturing been like for you.
Manufacturing is a very big challenge for a lot of designers worldwide. Mostly in Dubai, what we have is little workshops or very big manufacturing units for the likes of Gaps and Walmarts and big supermarket chains. So either it's a mass market production or little workshops that are very specialized in a certain type of dresses. A lot of them are the jalabiyas and that sort of a cut that doesn't have much, doesn't change every season. So it's a very big challenge for a designer who has like a kind of a different patterns and a sort of look to come and introduce it to a small workshop and say, hey, you need to do this according to a certain pattern and do it in the right way. So I think what designers would be looking for is probably an area, or how do you put that, probably part of the co-op or the collective. There is a manufacturing facility whereby they can start with a small minimum, and a small minimum, I tell you, starts at 50 pieces. Currently, if I am to do any style at a 50 piece, it happens in a sample room. It's not even a factory line.
You mean when you go to China or
when
Hong
you go
Kong
to China,
Shenzhen,
Hong Kong, all of these big factories. So it is a smaller unit. It's still not a big factory for a 50-piece collection or 50-piece per item per style, but it's a good start. I think a lot of people would definitely be willing to do that. We sell up to between ready-to-wear accessories, jewelry designers. We have up to 100 regional and local designers. So there is that bulk of designers who are seeking this sort of facility. So I think the minimums would be there for a facility, and it definitely needs to happen sooner than later, because in many ways it even encourages them to keep it up. Yeah. Because we have often seen the first season it was a great collection, the second was not that amazing, the third, the fourth, and then it disappears because they couldn't actually sustain doing them in the 6 workshops they go to.
Yeah, so manufacturing could be make or break for designers at an early stage.
Absolutely.
And can I just add something?
Yeah.
I mean, Dubai has always been sort of like the capital of opportunity. And yesterday I met a couple of manufacturers that were really just, amongst the guests, and they introduced themselves to me, and they said, we want to meet all the designers, we want to shift our focus, and we can really help them. And then as I was talking to them, another designer approached me, said, I really want to show, but I have a problem with manufacturing. And I said, and this is a real story. And I said, perfect timing, meet each other. So I introduced a designer to 2 manufacturers. And I think this is what's great about events like this, about platforms like this, is that there's networking opportunities. And the more we push fashion industry as a mandate, I know that amongst the audience, amongst everyone else, people will start to think, what opportunity, what services can I give to the industry? Yeah. And I think you'll have a lot of this churning up.
Yeah. I remember when you first launched the last season, we had a conversation and you said, we're not calling it a fashion week because maybe it's not necessarily, it's at a point where fashion weeks are buyers, and there's a lot of aspects to a professionally trade-run fashion week, and maybe Dubai has not evolved quite there yet. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in paraphrasing how you said that, but what kind of for you is a measure of success of Fashion Forward? Is it that you're making these connections? Is it that buyers are coming here and placing orders? And
as a team, we just really prefer the word forward because it's more progressive. I think a week is very limiting to like 7 days, and it's a misnomer. Anyway, I keep saying that. No, but I think what's great about Fashion Forward is it really has this positive attitude to just take things forward. And it's really a movement. As corny as it may sound, it is really a movement. It's what we're all trying to do. It's we're we're not at a place where we've arrived, but we're going to arrive definitely. And when we arrive, it's going to be great, you know.
So the measure isn't yet how many buyers necessarily came, because it's not necessarily there
I just
yet.
had this discussion earlier with someone earlier today, and our designers know that. I keep telling them, look, we're not promising you heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying, even in the most mature of fashion weeks, whether it's London or New York, a designer, when they participate there, they need to have at least participated a good 4 seasons before anyone will pay attention to them. Because buyers need to know that they are accountable, they're consistent, and they're not going to disappear after next season. I mean, we are just starting, you know. What's important is that we get the attention of the buyers, first the regional buyers. There's no point in trying to bring Barney's and Macy's and all of that. Let's just look at each other first. Let's try to sell to each other. When you have 5 to 6 stockists in the region, then it's time for you. Then it's time for us to look at other things. But first, let's look at each other, and I think that's going to happen. I know that, and it doesn't happen overnight. A lot of your regional buyers, a lot of this. I mean, Zayan started. She was one of the pioneers of you know the boutiques, you know, and there's a lot of them coming up. I think we're also getting the attention of the giant retail groups. I know the buzzword is regional fashion design, and I know that they're going to start looking at it seriously. But it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah. There's one of the things that Nanette Lepore in her talk mentioned was that she didn't actually have a catwalk show for 10 years. She just went to the trade shows. And then someone wisely pointed out it's very expensive to go to the trade shows, which leads me to the question of funding. And, you know, in order for any startup business to get anywhere, they need money. And this is something I hear from a lot of young designers. What role can the government play in this? And will you be playing a role? And maybe, Cyrille, you can talk about this a little bit.
Talking to designers about the obstacles they face. I think that they mentioned 4 as, and you know, we cover already a number of them. I mean, manufacturing was, you know, an important one. Certainly access to retail was another very important one. Being small, how can you afford sort of to buy more rent? But indeed, incubation and funding was the 3rd one, and the 4th one was certainly IP regulation that you know, are perceived to fall short, to be a bit short in the region. I think let's talk 2 minutes before talking funding about access to retail. I think access to retail, and you mentioned it, is a very difficult challenge. It's a little bit linked to funding, and I think these 3 will contribute to bring a solution to that by having a cluster of boutique all on these 3 that will create a destination that if you want to find regional design fashion, you go to these 3. You know it's all there. And it will be a much more retail-friendly environment than Alcos or some other part of the city where you have the nucleus of that at the moment. So I think this cluster of stores will really bring an important solution there and hopefully resolve some of the funding question. Now, you also need, I think, an incubation structure, and that's what I think Zayan was also referring to. Not all designers are natural businessmen. They are designers. They love to design. This is what they love to do. But are they ready to have a, you know, a consistent quality over years, to have a schedule, a very tight schedule to overcome all these manufacturing challenges? They need not only money, and I think money is important, but it's broader than money. It's really about incubation. It's about having very successful designers like Zayan to share some of her lessons learned to others, so that what took her maybe multiple seasons to overcome, maybe with the right advice, you can help people to, you know, don't go to Bali or.
I'm still learning. There I go.
But some of the existing learning. And I think that incubation structure, I think S-Mode has already launched such an incubation, but I think it has to be we have to have much more than one and many more programs, and that's also something I think that
Sure,
these
so
three
there's
will
the
have.
educational incubation.
But not as education as I'm giving you a
mentorship,
course.
sure.
Really as I'm helping you on the
Hand-holding.
business side as a
Yeah.
mentoring.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very important.
Yeah. But the question still remains, though, is where can people get them, even to have a catwalk show, for instance. You might have a really talented designer, but maybe they don't have the money to participate. What is the option for them here? Will there potentially be something, will the government create a fund? Will the equivalent of the Fashion Design Council here have some sort of scholarship?
Just to expand on that, I think this is not specific to fashion. SMEs in the region have a lot of difficulties to get access to funding. You know, there is a ranking by the World Bank called the Ease of Doing Business Survey. Mm-hmm. And one of the criteria is called the ease of getting credit. Mm-hmm. And although Dubai and the UAE is scoring pretty well in the survey overall, you know, probably top 25 country in the world to do business in terms of ease of doing business, but on credit, we are way behind. 50, 60s, 100 tops country in the world. So this is really an area of concern for SMEs in general and for designer. You know, if you don't have a balance sheet with 5 years of profitable operation, it's very, very difficult to get funding from a commercial bank here in Dubai. And therefore, some form of funding, I think if you are Emirati, you already have some form of funding you can tap into. The Khalifa Fund in Abu Dhabi, and we have a similar structure in Dubai. But what if you're not, you are Lebanese designers, you are not an Emirati, but you are based in Dubai, you're working here, then you are in the challenge you're mentioning.
So it faces the entire industry. Well, is there something D3 can do in particular to address, at least for design?
I think there's a few things we have to think about with this. Imar has just come out and announced $100 million US fund to support emerging designers. That's major, that's big. The thing that we see, or my working hypothesis right now, is that the funding is actually there because we have seen some different companies, some different individuals who are really interested in helping the creative community. What's not clear is the mechanism to access the funding. So I'm not convinced that the funding is missing as much as the knowledge of the mechanism or the knowledge of the steps is missing. And that's something I think that Fashion 2020 will be looking into and will be really trying to understand. Is it a cash question or is it a preparing your pitch and your business question?
Yeah. A lot of designers who present their portfolios to you, and then you have to decide who gets a catwalk show. What is your criteria? Do they have to be Arab? Do they have to be based here? How does one establish themselves as a Dubai designer?
For lack of a council, for now, we took the liberty of, creating our own screening committee, and we have quite the obvious parameters in our selection process. Number of years in business, brand building, mechanisms, and the whole works. We look at longevity and accountability and all that. And of course, the designs themselves. We're not preaching to be the vanguards of fashion. I think we're just, in our own way, trying to do what we can. We can't please everyone, but we try to do our best. What identity is going to come out of this is yet to be seen. What I think you have here is a very strong pool of talent, rich heritage of Middle Eastern influences, very, very cosmopolitan, but which market isn't cosmopolitan these days? It almost have to be cosmopolitan. And I think you will find that season after season, and you kind of like see it if you really pay attention to the collections of each of the designers. They are different in many ways, but there's somehow an underlying common influence, and I would like to think that the environment is doing that. There's something common to us. It's where we live. So I'm sure that that's going to be translated, and eventually will translate into sort of like the look and feel of anything fashion coming out of the region.
Yeah, it kind of leads me to thinking about what is the market for designers here, and maybe Cyrille and Zayan, From a business perspective, Cyrille, you study the retail markets in the region. Should designers be starting here first? Is the opportunity here?
Just to come back to your question about the identity, I think it's fundamental. I think every fashion capital has a different identity. Paris is about haute couture and the integration with the art. Milan about more ready-to-wear and the made in Italy with all the 3,000 suppliers. London more about emerging designers and so on. So we need to have our own identity. We will not be successful as a copycat of others. As part of the identity, and I think there is something about being a getaway, that Dubai is in many areas, that is in both directions. A getaway for regional designers to go to the world, and maybe a getaway for the world's designer to reach the Minasa or the Mina consumers. I think that should be part of the identity. Only a part, there's probably many other things, but that strikes me as an important one. But to come back to your question about, yes, there is a large market for certainly for fashion here, and a very attractive one. Not only it's large, you mentioned sort of 5 to 6 billion euro market for premium and luxury fashion, and that's the segment that most emerging designer will go. Probably not the luxury part, but the premium part, which is about half of that number. More importantly, it's a growing market. It's one that has gone into a hyper growth phase and is now projected to grow at a very strong but more sustainable pace than in the future. So probably around 8-10% as an expected growth rate in the future. So that's an attractive market.
Yeah, so emerging designers can focus on the region. Zayan, have you found, I know you've also done very well internationally, and you're in 14 markets. But
my brand has done well internationally, but I also, just to go back to your question, is the market ready for regional designers' business? Very much so, because we've retailed regional designers, and the numbers we've made out of regional designers are great. We have, for great selling design, we have 88% sell-throughs. We've looked at them and we saw, compared to big names who have catwalk shows at the end of the day, and how much a profit you make by the end of the day because of the margins you have to put there. They are great business for us. They're great business for stores who actually choose to retail them. But it's never like the collections that you see is the collection that you buy, and it's not necessarily that what you see on the catwalk needs to be on the rail, because every buyer customizes for their customer. Every buyer knows their market, what they're looking for. They need it to be longer, they need it to be shorter, they need different colors. And this is the beauty of fashion, is that the same collection can look different in different stores, because buyers do customize too in order to make sure that it is commercial on their shop floor. Dubai is a great business for fashion designers and fashion in general.
Where do you find your orders coming from? Where are the majority of your orders coming from?
The majority of my orders are still from the GCC. I have 1 or 2 retailers in every country now, in Kuwait, in Saudi, in Qatar, in Dubai. I have currently we picked up a couple of new accounts, one in Mexico, one in Italy, we have in Japan, we have so we have an Asian agent, and we feel like this is the collection also appeals to that part of the world. They're consolidating orders and sending it by end of the week, which we're looking forward to. But the reaction apparently has been very positive, and they love the collection. So there is quite a lot of potential. But as I always say, you need to follow the fashion schedule, and this is the buzzword. This is it. You need to be fast, you need to be on time, you need to be the quality standard and the price point that designers internationally are competing at. And this is what I feel is what is lacking here for the designer to understand. In order to make it outside Dubai or outside the region, you need to look at all of these factors.
Yeah. What has been the best route for you in terms of getting orders from buyers? You said you recently started working with an agent. what's the best way to do it for an emerging designer? Do you do a catwalk show and hope that you get visibility?
I've always told Bong that I would have never done a fashion show ever in my life if it wasn't for, you know, setting up Fashion Forward, or actually if it wasn't for Bong, because I know he throws great.
She didn't have a choice. I forced her.
But my first trade show was in, actually my first 3 trade shows, I went all out. I went to New York, Paris, and Japan. I mean, the collection is very much, very eclectic, very girly, a lot of fun. So Japan was a no-brainer, and I love the country. But Paris and New York, I mean, if you want to be seen even by GCC buyers, you need to be somewhere there. It gives you the credibility that you actually have a collection on schedule, that you're actually going to produce it. They need to see it out there. Whether this is good news or bad news, but you know, they do.
So even the GCC buyers are going there.
We sell them in Paris. Do you think that will ever
change, Zayan? Do you think we will be at a point where we don't have to go outside to sell here, for this market?
I'm actually an optimist. I actually think we would. I think our timing needs to be probably better. A lot of buyers close their budgets way much earlier in the season, and this is a very big challenge. And again, it depends on the economic situation. Not a lot of big retailers are picking up new brands, not just from Dubai. I mean, everywhere, all over the world. Everyone is complaining. Everyone is sticking to the brands that they know. If there's 1 or 2 brands, often they have support from manufacturing groups, and they know that they can, you know, push them financially, and so it's a very big challenge. But I don't think it cannot be done. Even to reach out to an agent, I mean, it took me 6 seasons to convince an agent whom I believe can reach out to the agent market to take on the collection. It's not like you can go and say, oh, here I am, take my collection on. So you need to prove yourself. You need at least 4 collections to do that. And you need the 4 collections to actually make sure that you can produce, because problems can happen every single collection, and it will. No matter what happened, there will always be something that goes wrong. So you need to preempt it, work on it. So there's quite a lot involved there.
Yeah.
But you know, what makes me optimistic as well is in other retail segments, you can be now successful in Saudi Arabia or in Kuwait or in Qatar, provided that you've been successful in Dubai. It's no longer, and we see take food service as an example, number of food service entrepreneurs that created restaurant concept here in Dubai, and because they were successful in Dubai, they gained the credibility in other countries. Now, fashion is different, but at least in other retail segment, we've seen some sign of that happening.
So if you can establish your market well here, then those buyers are coming here as well.
Yeah.
The Saudis are coming here to buy. I mean, look at the Eid weekend, 24 hours, malls are open.
It easily applies to fashion. We definitely have seen it, that once a local brand has been seen at a retailer in Dubai, you know that it is the chances that they will be contacted by retailers in Qatar, in Saudi. The chances are much higher. Often they tell us, oh, they saw it at your store and they contacted us, and now they're selling in. So it's definitely, you know, it rolls.
Yeah. I'll have one last question of my own before we open it up, because I'm sure there's a lot out there. How long is this all going to take? In Dubai, we're so used to things happening so quickly. When will we actually be able to call Dubai a fashion capital? And I'd like to hear from everyone on this one. Maybe infrastructurally, we'll start with Lindsay.
Well, 2015, everyone moves into D3, hopefully. I think that will be a big step. But my horizon is 5 to 7 years, and I actually loved what you said the other day. We were at a workshop, and when you said shui shui, like, we do need to make sure that we lay the foundation, we have substance to the industry before we take the next step. So it's not that I don't want to be optimistic. Dubai is amazing with their timelines, but let's get it right. And for that, I do think it's a 5 to 7 year journey.
Very much aligned. I would add, I think what's important is that we get a positive momentum towards becoming a global fashion capital, that we make progress every year, and we do. And maybe that the rate of progress is accelerating. Exactly when are we going to be there? I think we need to moderate everybody's expectation in a way. You know, at Fashion Forward, talking to people, the level of excitement is so high. They say, hold a minute, you know, it won't happen tomorrow. It's going to take some time, but we're going to do it right, and we're going to progress toward the target. Every year is going to be better. But, you know, frankly, that's why Fashion 220, you know, I quite like the fact that by 220, we should be there, hopefully sooner. But I think 220 is an expo. It's something that, you know, we can all synergize toward that ambition.
Yeah. Bong, what's the benchmark for you?
Somewhere between shui and exponential. Dubai is always known to do wonders, but I would like to think that this is not going to happen overnight, definitely. But I know that if everyone put efforts, collective effort, it can happen. We have the talent. There's the interest. Already, consumerism here is very high. It's, you know, everyone else wants to sell here, you know. So we just have to crack how to sell to ourselves. So I'd like to think sooner than later, you know.
Zayan?
And 2020, I think, is a good tangible deadline as well.
For us, I would say it's currently happening. It just started happening, and we're on the way. I'd love to say it's kind of we want it immediately, but managing everybody's expectations, getting it right is very important. But also knowing that, you know, as you are going to be doing it, things are going to happen wrong along the way. Pick yourself up and, you know, do it differently and do it right. But again, as I said, the fashion business is and it's getting faster and faster every day. It's a very speedy kind of industry. You cannot wait up and you cannot say, let's see what's going to happen. You need to preempt it. You need to be fashion forward at it. You need to be the first to do it in order for you to kind of keep the momentum going. So it needs to be fast on all levels, and creation to development to, you know, having it out there and happening.
So fast-moving industry in a fast-moving city.
Can I just add that, you know, with season 1 and season 2, we've invited some really top-notch personalities from the fashion world, from the fashion capitals of Milan and New York and Paris, and they have been genuinely impressed with what's going on without sugarcoating it. They know that there's a lot to be improved, but the seeds are there, and if they think so, that we can definitely achieve what we're out to, our objectives, then definitely we can do it. You know, we can do it.
Great. Well, I want to open it up for questions in the audience. We'll maybe start in the back over there. And if you could just identify yourself.
Hi. So I'm Becky. I'm a reporter from Lebanon. Something that we see when I go to designers to talk about their collections, their work, you usually can't have a conversation with them without bringing up the craftsmen and the artisans that helped them. And I would wager that the accessibility of these craftsmen in the country is what has led to the success of some of the biggest Lebanese names that we can think of. So I'm curious, what kind of weight are the powers that be putting on bringing artisans here, craftsmen? Because the designer is just a piece of the puzzle. I mean, a lot of it is the craftsman. So.
And they're all in Lebanon.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Lindsay?
This is something that the fashion strategy has been looking at, and it really is looking at the full value chain, but obviously that's a very key component of it. Again, I actually think there's more in the UAE than people realize, and the UAE has been very successful. Dubai has been very successful at importing talent. I think that people in general, so many people live here because we have a better life than we would back where we're from. And I think that will translate to bringing craftsmen as well. I'd love to hear what you think about it.
No. I agree. It's all about having the right ecosystem quite broadly. And I think we can attract those talent. We've done it in other industries, and I think we are very well positioned to do it in the fashion industry. But we need to create equally that cluster. It wouldn't be effective. People, as you say, don't realize how much is already existing, and the reason is because things are fragmented all over the countries. And one of the things that I hope D3 will bring is a common umbrella. Mm-hmm. And people will see for themselves everything that is there and will be able to interact on open space, on open park, and network, as you were saying, in a much easier way than before. Yep. A bit like Jebel Ali have done, you know, or the other free zones.
Yeah. We were talking about it a little bit earlier, and I do think that people from abroad looking into Dubai, they underestimate the volume of what's going on here. And that's part of what's so important about cooperating with each other and building this collective, is to actually be able to send the message of there's a lot more going on here from a volume and from a level perspective or quality perspective than people are aware, which is why, you know, Fashion Forward is a very important event, and all of these getting together events are so important.
Hi, I'd like to add up to her question, and I think Zayan might agree with me that it might be a governmental issue to get the perfect people to work for us or with us, because we don't get to try them before we get them and approve to have them stay. Once they come, it's done. It's a visa that's been paid for, and that's a huge issue for us. And I have to say, I've been disappointed many, many times. So you need to either let them go or train them and waste a lot of energy and money on that. Mm. So if D3, because I heard you were trying to supply or provide a platform for resources, maybe that could be also taken into consideration, where we wouldn't have to struggle to find great tailors, great master cutters, and instead we'd have the great choices who we just pick from, or something like that.
No, absolutely. It's something actually even in other industries we've been very conscious at TCOM of looking at what's your freelancer pool, or what's the pool available to the industry. So because you're not just attracting people based on the volume, but you're also spreading the risk. So that's definitely something that we need to look at.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mohsen Said. I'm from Pakistan, and I have a brand called The Pink Tree. So first, I'd like to ask you how we could assist you, or we could provide you with that craftsmanship, because we have a rich tradition of crafts in the subcontinent, and we'd like to offer, because I also have a workshop, I'd like to offer my services for craftsmanship, which would be a lot cheaper for you. As the lady mentioned, that it's very difficult to get a craftsman here. You could send your pieces there and they can be worked upon. That's my first question. Secondly, my question is to Zayan. I've been trying to contact Source for the last 1 year, and I've been retailing in Dubai for the last 2 years, and I've done everything, written, sent pictures, tried to get contact. I would love to stock at Source. How can I get in touch with you?
I really
have a meeting with you.
I must say, at any given time, really, at SOS, we have up to 450 designers, like in any given season, which is really much wider selection than a lot of the boutiques. But I also must add that me and my team of buyers, who are also here in the audience, we cannot start telling you how many emails we get on a daily basis. And we do attend to all of these emails, and we even have emails to tell you exactly what we think of the collection. I know because I'm always CC'd on them. We have a general email, which is new@shopitsauce.com. Everybody gets that email. Everybody reviews the collection. But you know, we are probably 4 months a year, we're out of the country. We're literally on the road. That's 4 months of just the regular Milan, Paris, New York, London fashion weeks, other than the off-fashion weeks. So we're not really all of the time on our emails. If one of the emails slip, it happens. It often actually happens. And it's always the designer that we did not respond to the email is the one who says, oh, we sent you the email and you don't reply. We always take the time to actually do reply. So if you want to forward that email again to new@shopitsauce,
you'll definitely get an answer this time. But on his first question, the potential to work with other countries if you're not able to bring them here.
But I think that's already happening in any case. I mean, I remember when I started my own fashion house 20 years ago, I mean, we would go to India and you know, have the embroideries made there. We had workshops there, and we recruited artisans from India and Pakistan as well. And I think there's a lot of that happening between the ateliers where they have counterparts or support workshops elsewhere, and not limited to the subcontinent, but they look into Turkey, they look into China, and I think that's just naturally happening.
But one thing we can possibly help, I think part of D3 as well, is to have many more of the marketing office of these companies, be them in Pakistan or in Turkey, or present here in Dubai, so that if you are a designer for wherever in the region, you come to Dubai, a little bit like Hong Kong, and you know you will be able to meet the rep office of all the important manufacturers and contractors, so that you don't have to fly to Bali and to Hong Kong and to India. You have all the rep office here. And I think that's, you know, one of the sort of natural value proposition of Dubai in this area.
We can have 2 more questions. Because we're running out of time.
2 more questions. Sanya?
We've just done a study under International for the capacity in terms of the freelance labor available in specialized crafts, like the craftspeople who do special embroideries or freelance tailors. There are 480 craftspeople, and there are 620 freelance tailors.
Based in Dubai, right?
Based across UAE. We've gone to Fujairah, we've gone to Al Ain, so there's a substantial sum. What you're right is that we need to get them on a collective voice. We're trying to speak to the craftspeople to become collectives on their own. Especially in Fujairah, we find that each one is independently doing things. People in Ras Al Khaimah are doing their things independently. So to become a collective, and then like you rightly said, maybe you need a show window where you could come and actually be present, but there's a very, very big, good talent available of freelance people still here.
Good statistics.
In the back.
Hi. Bong mentioned me earlier. I just wanted to ask Lindsay, whether D3 has got anything planned for manufacturers to come in there.
So the D3 master plan right now doesn't have a manufacturing zone. There's a light industrial potential zone. What we'll be looking more at is how to facilitate manufacturing in other places for the inhabitants of D3, if you will. I don't actually think that plot is a perfect fit for actual manufacturers to be there, if that's your question.
We assumed that when we saw the whole D3. we didn't think that we'd be welcome.
No, but having said that, I have to tell you that TCOM has other zones where manufacturing is accommodated. So there's the International Media Production Zone, and there's Dubai Industrial City. Yep. So there is room for it.
But they're so far away. DIP, you know, if I mention to Zayan that I've got my unit in DIP, she'll say, oh, bloody hell, I'm not coming all the way there.
Well, I don't know if it's, you know, yeah.
It's closer than China.
Pakistan.
No, for sure I would.
Did that answer your question?
So it's closer than China.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, we'll look at that option. Because at the moment we're in a retail space, and to find somewhere where we can actually manufacture in a bigger scale, it's very difficult. You have to go to Ajman, you have to go to Sharjah. Yeah.
Look,
so we thought if we're manufacturers at the doorstep of the designers, they don't have to take time out an hour away, drive out an hour away to come and see what's happening to their production, etc.
Well, I think the designers are going so far, Zayan, to your point, that you wouldn't...
I don't believe, like, even in other countries, that manufacturing facilities happen right next to where the workshops of designers are. They're often centralized in certain areas, and even if you're based let's say whether even if it's London-based designers who manufacture in England, you have to go wherever they are, which is outside of London. Yes. Their workshops are in London. So it is always centralized in an area that's not very central or not really smack in the hub of the city. Okay.
Just wanted to know if there was something there for manufacturers, but that's fine. Our cause is always there. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
I need to check with if we have time for one more question.
No, unfortunately not, because there are shows now.
Yeah, we have shows starting, but thank you all very much for coming. Our panel is here and around for the rest of the evening. Zayan has a show later on tonight as well. She'll probably run off, but thank you for coming.